This is not American school. This is not you do it if you want to and you don't do it if you don't want to. This is Russian school. We sat up in our seats. It's the most powerful statement I've ever had in my life. And so her kids became our grandkids.
Olga, how you met Tom?
All right, so when I graduated from University of Houston, it was summer of 1998. I started looking for a job, and I've been in the country just a little bit over like a year, like almost 2 years. So I looked everywhere, and I wasn't sure what the interview process is. My English was still kind of shaky. So I was recommended to start looking at NASA contractors. And one of the first companies I applied was Hamilton Sandstrand. So it was a good time to find jobs, like late 90s. So I think on the first interview, they were like, do you know how to program? Do you know databases? We have a really bad project. You have to step in and do it. And I was like, yeah, I think I can do it. And then I saw a salary, and I mean, it seemed like gigantic, so I accepted an offer. And I started working for NASA, which became extremely exciting, but I didn't know much. And on the day one, they told me, like other peers of my age, they were like, you come on time because the general manager of the company, at 7:30, he makes a stroll around the office and he sees who is there, and also he can randomly give you a call about your project. So naturally, I have not met Tom in person. I was like really, really nervous. I was there at 7:30 all day. So then I saw him at the meetings, and he was talking at big meetings where the whole office, like hundreds of people were together, and he was talking about business goals, how much money we have to make revenue. Half of this I did not understand, but I mean, I was naturally very like intimidated and like scared.
General manager.
Yeah, so I had great respect, but those were kind of my first impressions.
But what was your first meeting, first conversation? Do you remember that? Did he pop up in your office or your cubicle?
No, he never. I guess I was completely out of the radar of general manager's interest.
Okay.
No.
So you were a general manager at that time?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you remember her coming in? Did you know that you got this new hire?
The short answer is no,
Okay.
because Eric Newman hired you, right?
Yeah.
So one of my direct reports hired Olga. I didn't have anything to do with it. So I first met Olga because she offered to teach a class in basic Russian language one day a week after work. I don't know if that was the first time we met or not, but
why did you offer? So was it open for everyone, or was it just for the general manager?
No. It was open for anybody that wanted to.
In my mind, it was not open for general manager. That was the whole idea. So I'll talk a little bit how it happened. So I wanted to gain friends. So first, they're like, do you want to sign for the mixed softball team? And I didn't even know what softball was, but I did sign, and that didn't work out really well.
Why, you got hit?
I got hit on
on the forehead?
forehead with the ball, and then finally when I was able to swing, I forgot to drop the bat, and I was running. I mean, this whole experience was a disaster. I'm like, I'm not made for that. So then I naturally was like, okay, I'll try to teach Russian after work, so I'll meet people. And people come in. I was surprised, maybe already 15 people, but mostly young.
They would be interested in that.
Because we built a spacesuit and worked directly with Zvezda in Russia, so they would travel, and there were Russian engineers in the office, so there was interest. So younger people come, we're setting up, and then I see Tom walking into the room and sitting at the table. I almost lost my in Russia, it would be completely impossible.
Right.
And
Big
I
chief
was
coming
like,
in.
I think I couldn't even talk. And he's like, oh, hi, I'm Tom. You relax.
You do your thing, right?
So that's how we
So what drove you to come to that class? You wanted to learn basic Russian, or you just...
I'm horrible in languages.
Okay.
But we were dealing with the Russians and having meetings
Right.
in our offices with Russians, including some cosmonauts. And I wanted to be able to say, "Good morning, how
Right,
are
basic.
you? Меня зовут Tom," basic things. And so I said, so this was advertised as basic Russian.
Okay.
Olga took it to a new level later. That's why I took it. It's basically the stuff that I remember now years later. That's what I wanted to learn, but it took a long time.
But he became really good. He could read the text, tell about his day, sang Russian songs, cite poems. I mean, I did
So
take it.
he told me, kind of his own grade of what kind of a student he used to be in the school. How was he in the Russian class?
I did not give them any choice. They had to do homework, they had to learn poems by heart, they had to make greeting cards in Russian. So whoever tried to slack, I said that would be their last class.
That's an understatement. So Olga's presenting this like out of fear, right?
Okay.
And I actually don't remember walking around at 7:30. I usually wasn't there at 7:30.
Okay.
But so she's presenting this out of fear. So we would normally meet. There was like a dozen of us, and we'd meet in our conference room. And and then the numbers started dwindling because there was homework to do every week and more homework, etc. And so people started dropping out. So we had one student in the class who had Russian in college.
Okay.
So Olga would naturally usually go to him first because he'd get us warmed up
Okay.
and going, responding. So one day the assignment was come to class with 3 sentences in Russian on
Okay.
what you did that day. And at that time, that was a hard,
Okay.
assignment for us. So that particular day, there were only about 4 of us or 5 of us. And the conference room was being used, and I said, well, let's go to my office. I have a big table, and we'll do it in there. So we were in there. She calls on Skip, which was not a surprise, and she says in Russian, what did you do today? And he's like a bump on a log. He was never this way. And so Olga said, we had to have 3 sentences. And Olga said, did you have a meeting at NASA today? And he says, da. That's it.
Okay.
Just da. And she's still okay. And then she says, and was your meeting on spacesuits? And he says, da. The roles were totally reversed.
Right.
Olga says, I remember it like it was yesterday. Olga says, this is not American school. This is not you do it if you want to, and you don't do it if you don't want to. This is Russian school. I, as the general manager, and another very senior guy in his 60s, we both went to Catholic school. We sat up in our seats.
Like this, yeah.
This. I will never forget that.
So you were a strict teacher, and they were not a great student.
Well, they were, and later, I mean, I could see that at home their spouses would, whenever I would give them a task to cook Russian dish or learn, I could see that their spouses were like either passing something, and then I said, Tom, can we expand it to spouses, like to
Right.
significant others? And he checked and said, why not? And that's how several also brought their wives, and one lady brought her husband, and that's how I actually met then.
My wife was one of the students.
She was
Okay.
the best.
So
She
yeah, my
aced
wife
it.
is a linguist.
Okay.
So she speaks
her
Spanish, she speaks some German, she has a degree in French, and she loves languages, and I don't do well with languages. So she said, I want to go to the class, so she participated in the class. And then when the class finally ended, and I will tell you, it ended because we were just so tired of doing homework. And Olga was surprised that everybody said, after a year, we said, okay, no more. And she was surprised. But what happened, and we talked about this later, was because these were people who were motivated to do well in whatever
Right.
they did, they were putting in all the work, but it was taking more and more time. But Olga looked at us like, these people are really smart. And so she kept raising the bar, and then pretty soon we just said, we can't do this anymore.
Got it.
But then my wife took Russian from Olga's mother for 6 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So she's fluent in Russian then?
Well, I
very
wouldn't call her fluent, but we were
Very
in
good.
Moscow one time, and somebody asked her something on the street, or she asked him, and I remember her saying, "He understood me."
I got it, right?
Yeah, I got it. I got it.
So okay, so you become friends with Brenda and Tom.
Right.
So how did that mature and evolve?
So I think, first of all, of course, we really liked each other, and Tom gave me a lot of professional advice. But most importantly, I think we started sharing the cultures. I did not really have many American friends understanding the culture. So I remember first time Tom invited me for their Thanksgiving, which they have
Okay.
every day, and I spent in this room like probably 2 hours because Tom was
yeah,
telling me
that's
about all this. So they're trying to engage me with various American traditional activities, and I tried to engage them with Russian activities. We went to the Russian restaurant
Okay.
a couple times to like Stoli Grill before that, then to Russian Bear we were eating. Then I invited them a couple times when they were friends gathering or like so I think it started with trying to share the culture because I think we're both kind of like that. That's my
Yeah, that's a good answer. My wife and I love foreign cultures. My wife has been to 50 countries and I've been to 44.
Oh, wow.
And the primary motivation is to see and experience other cultures. Americans aren't so great at that. Olga brought us into the Russian community, and so many of the Russians became our friends. You know, local Russians became our friends, and still are our friends. So, yeah, it was a
Now you guys more than just friends. You
Yeah.
are an extended family essentially, right?
right. I don't
How did
think-
that happen?
yeah.
What about your kids? What's the relationship there?
I don't think we could predict that.
No, not at all. But I would actually like to tell that part of the
Please.
story because I've told it many times. Olga was brilliant, actually. And she completed this job that her boss had given her, but we really couldn't challenge her. You know, you and I were talking about the A
Right.
students and the C students. We were more of an operations company, so we were dealing with a finished product that was designed and manufactured in Connecticut and shipped down here, and we were testing it here and training astronauts and things like that. That kind of stuff really didn't challenge Olga. And so she chose to leave our company and go to another company. We left on good terms because we recognized we can't challenge this woman, you know, and she needs to be challenged. So she left, and we stayed in some manner of contact. And then somewhere along the line, it seems strange to say this so quickly, but she and Nikolai married.
Okay.
And then maybe 2 years later, Tatiana was born, and Olga came to us, my wife and I, she and Nikolai came to us and said, "We want American grandparents for our kids." It's the most powerful statement I've ever had in my life. And so her kids became our grandkids. First with Tatiana, then with Daniel. We have another friend who was a single mom when her daughter was born, and those are our 3 grandkids.
That's
There's
amazing.
their photo. And when I tell the story, women in particular often cry. It's not usually me on camera.
Me too.
It's not usually me on camera. But it was, without question, the most impactful statement I've ever been asked in my life. We don't have kids. So I often joke about the fact that we skipped over the hard part of being parents, and we went right to the fun part. And those kids are like our kids, and they have never, our grandkids, and they have never thought about us as anything but their grandparents, nor introduced us as anything but their grandparents. I mean, we love those kids like you can't even imagine, you know. And we've traveled all over the world with them.
That's so beautiful.
Yeah, yeah.
What motivated you guys to do that?
Well, we were so close, and we felt like Tom and Brenda were taking a lot of care of us. They were already like very, very close. And you know how typically in Russian families, grandparents are really close. And my mom is here and my stepfather, but my dad is in Moscow, and Nikolai's parents were in Belarus. So we really wanted for our kids to be surrounded by that love like we were. And they were so amazing people, and I couldn't imagine what it would mean. I've heard that American parents would grandparents would give gifts for Christmas, maybe would see kids for a weekend somewhere in Disney World or something. So of course I could not even imagine what it would mean, but I thought it would be really, really impactful. But what turned out, they were like Russian super duper helicopter grandparents. They were like, oh my God, there was not a day probably when they did not see the kids. For 3 months, Brenda was with Daniel when he was newborn, so I could go to work. So there were shifts. My mom did it, Nikolai's dad, my dad, and 3 months it was Brenda. Every day they were picking them up from daycare, taking to activities. Every year going to the big trips. Everything I could call Brenda, oh, he forgot this. It's like it was like this daily operation. And kids were going to Russia and Belarus every other year, and typically we would take them one way or sometimes and Tom and Brenda would bring them back every time.
So you've been to Russia multiple times? Belarus?
Yeah, I've been 4 times. Once on business, and then the other 3 to pick up Olga's kids at the end of the summer.
And to Belarus once.
And to Belarus, yeah. And I mean, the only way I can describe it is her family is our family.
And vice versa, and we're very
like
close.
we know all of her relatives in Moscow, all their friends in Belarus. And, you know, I said we love foreign cultures, and there was no better exposure to foreign cultures
you got all of it.
to Moscow and to Belarus.
That's amazing. So the kids have like so many grandparents. They're blessed.
Well, I will tell you that one time, I remember this so distinctly. Tatiana was 4 years old. A brilliant little girl and a brilliant girl now. She's in her 3rd year at MIT. And we were in the Volga Hotel, where where many NASA travelers go. And we sat in the lobby on a couch. And Tatiana's paternal grandfather was on the couch, I was on the couch, and Olga's father was on the couch. And so the 3 grandfathers, and Tatiana like sat next to us and was the interpreter at 4 years old. And I always describe it as like the United Nations interpreter, like this, and the desk clerks at the Volga, I remember their eyes were popping out of their heads like, what is going on here?
That's amazing.
But yeah, it's a wonderful memory, you know, that the 3 of us were there together. But the kids, I would often introduce the kids as surrogate grandkids, because a lot of people know that we don't have kids, you know, and it always required an explanation.
Right.
Brenda very quickly dropped the surrogate. You know, she just said, these are our grandkids. But more importantly, the kids never used surrogate, hinted at it, these are my grandparents. Never. I mean, now they're, you know, late teens, and it's still the same thing. I mean, Monday evening, Daniel and I are going to see the Rockets play, you know, And yeah, it's
You guys very,
one of the most beautiful
blessed.
things that's ever happened to me.
And it's amazing that you guys also in the same industry, the same area, you're so close to one another. That's the proximity to between the houses, I guess, and households is very close. So it's very nice.
Yeah,
Very.
You guys very
absolutely
close.
is.
Part
So-
of the same community, yeah.
Let me take you back to the business a
Oh.
little bit. So you were a GM back then. You're kind of a GM right now, or managing a huge project for the mission for the station. So I know you talked about it. Maybe someone can give me an answer about how is it different then and now in terms of running the business, running the mission, the station at the moment. What is different? What is similar? Any ideas?
Well, I pause only because I've been retired from my full-time job
Right.
at NASA for 13 years, and Olga's still pushing away.
And we're going to ask her if she's still feeling challenged or not.
Definitely. I mean, when I came on board, I saw how we transitioned from shuttle to station, which was very challenging. It was a similar transition, right, for workforce, for assets, for just operations, gaps, etc. But of course, I was much younger and I just was focused on my job. And now we're doing it again. So Tom was probably more engaged back then, right, when we tried.
I retired when the shuttle retired, but the transition was already starting. Yeah, it was challenging for sure.
And so now we're again in the transition phase, but I'm taking more active role and seeing ahead with all this commercial, space station, which are being built, upcoming missions to Moon, to Mars. I would say that it's a different budget situation overall than probably from the times when Tom was worked, and I think it was one of the record of a budget. So of course we have to be very cautious. We have to find effective solutions to keep going. So this is a huge consideration.
Right.
I'm not sure it was
I know
back then.
The input is different, but what about just simple things like work-life balance? And I know, Tom, you mentioned that you guys work so much, you were so passionate about it, and everyone was so passionate about the missions and about the work that people have been doing. You put a lot of hours into that. Was there a work-life balance?
Well, you're kind of going back to Apollo, I think.
Yeah, a bit.
And no, there was no work-life balance. There was work. And your friends were your coworkers, but there was very little engagement, partying, if you will, outside of work, because we were at work all the time. We did there used to be a restaurant that served alcohol named the Flintlock. It's been gone for decades and decades. And the one break that we would take was on Friday afternoons. And they had a band that started at 4:30.
Really?
Yeah. And all these people from NASA would go to the Flintlock. It was the one time it's like, nope, it's Friday afternoon. We might have to go back to work later, but we would go to the Flintlock, and there was a lot of alcohol consumed back then, But that was like virtually the only social thing. I was very close with my boss, and I was single. And so he and his wife would invite me to their house for dinner and stuff like that. But for the most part,
Or just work.
work-life balance really didn't exist. If you talk to the old Apollo guys, particularly those who were married, there were a lot of marriages that suffered because they were called NASA widows. Their wives were called NASA widows because their husbands were never at home. They were always at work. And it ended up causing a lot of divorces. Mm-hmm. And the wives ran the household. Fathers, the husbands, they weren't there to pay the bills, and everything was about the mission.
Interesting.
So it didn't exist. Once we got into shuttle, it
changed a little bit?
moderated some, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
What about you?
So-
in your history, I guess.
Right.
How was that?
So I think when I joined, there was already huge emphasis to create this work-life balance. So of course there were times when there were projects, deadlines, naturally, where you worked overtime. But other than that, in space industry, especially like direct NASA contractors on NASA, it's even hard to get overtime approved. I mean, so you work some overtime, but it's...
You don't get paid for that.
But what's interesting though, and Tom and I talked that at SpaceX right now, I think that's where the similar excitement and attitude to work repeats, because I mentioned Tatiana worked this summer in SpaceX and she described exactly that. They're putting 60, 70 hours a week. But they're having so much fun. She says, Mom, I'm having fun at work with my coworkers. And then all of us were concerned. We were hardly getting a phone call from her. And she would leave at 7 a.m. and come back at midnight. And if she would call at least one of us once in a, like, we were so excited. But she had it was the best time of her life. So we discussed that it's a similar kind of wave of that excitement and living at work with other young people. Like her managers were 28 years old and most peers were a little bit older than she was, just like Tom described.
Very similar to Apollo.
And also the highlight was when something exciting would happen in SpaceX industry somewhere, they would go to the bar across the street from Bastrop. You need to look up the name, or I'll ask her. And they would all gather there and hang out. So I think very similar.
So talking about a little bit of a technology. So when you were working for Apollo missions, and even after that, right? You use that. A lot of engineers use that. Till later it was computers, not laptops. Computers. Now you have access to absolutely a different level of technology, the speed, the processing power, and even AI perhaps. Have you seen in the last few years that, that efficiency going through the roof, and is that part of the reason why the staffing in NASA is reducing year on year, just because people becoming more efficient and providing more throughput?
I would say that at NASA itself, we don't see it as much as we probably should, because processes are still very conservative, because again, we need to be safe, and we inherited a lot of documentation, processes, rigor. So we don't yet use AI or things that solve problems. Of course, there are lots of IT applications, and we are streamlining processes. We are doing lots of efforts, but I would not say it's a dramatic change. While I'm sure these new contractors like Blue Origin, SpaceX, Axiom, they're definitely trying to depart from those processes and to automate and be more efficient.
Interesting. I meant to ask you, what is this?
Oh.
You have this, is it like a Snoopy in the space or something?
Yeah, it is our thing in space industry. It is a little silver Snoopy. It is an award.
An award?
An award, yeah, which is given like by astronauts. So astronauts would nominate you for this award if they hear you've done something impactful or you directly help them with something. So they would nominate NASA or NASA contractors to that award, and they would present it. So I received one just recently.
Can you share how you helped? Why were you nominated? What you've done?
Yeah. So last year I was leading an investigation of like an accident that happened in space when 2 Russian vehicles got hit. We believe that it was hit by probably meteoroid piece, and I led this investigation and ensured that crew can get home safely, and that's how I earned it. So.
Wow, how many people usually get it?
I mean, it's probably random, but during my ceremony there were about 15 people from NASA and NASA contractors across the United States. Yes, it was very special, and Tom, of course, attended my ceremony.
That's amazing.
But I can answer the question, and Olga is kind of downplaying it. The award is the only astronaut-only award. It can only be nominated by an astronaut. and it goes to 1% of the workforce.
Wow.
No more than 1% of the workforce.
You gotta be very proud.
Yeah.
And you gotta be very proud for her.
I'm very proud of her. I'm very proud of her. Yeah.
So, do you have a lot of friends who got the Snoopy Awards as well?
Yeah, I have a friend.
You got that one too?
Mine is a little older than Olga's.
Okay.
54 years older.
Does it still looks the same? Or is
Yeah. So
What we got?
I pulled it out. So that's what it looks like. I don't wear it all the time, but if I go to a NASA function, I'll wear it.
That's pretty cool.
So people who are not involved with NASA, like it's on my resume, I think, and they'll joke about it because, it doesn't sound like a professional award. NASA
There's an
people,
appreciation, right?
yeah, it comes from an astronaut. And so people at NASA, though, they understand it. It's a big deal. Yeah.
So what you've done to earn it?
I think the short answer is I helped put man on the moon. So,
I've heard that
I
somewhere.
got it from the Apollo 11 crew the year after they landed on the moon. So I think it was in like March or April or something like that.
Was it just the
No,
crew
it-
nominated people, or was one astronaut who nominated you? How was
Yeah,
it?
there was
Neil,
one
or-
astronaut that nominated me, but the today it's a standardized certificate
Right.
that everybody gets. But the Snoopy thing only started in the late '60s. It was fairly new. One of the things up on the wall here is a thing that came signed by all three Apollo astronauts. It was done differently than it's done now. But it was one of the Apollo 13 crew members that actually nominated me and a couple of my coworkers.
So you helped them to get to the moon.
Well, actually, I think for him, it was my company made the life support system in the lunar module. So if you know the story of Apollo 13.
Apollo 13 is a
we-
successful failure, I've heard.
Yes, yeah. So that life support system, kept them alive.
Thank you, Tom.
Yeah. Well, it wasn't me, but it was the life support system that my company made,
Right.
that kept them alive. And we were working during the mission, probably the most intense mission I ever worked. And you talk about round the clock, that was unbelievable. There's actually a show on Netflix about it now that is incredibly well done, a documentary.
Does it still talk
Incredibly
about
well
all the tools that you guys use to
No,
design things?
no, it
and
doesn't talk about slide rules or anything like that.
graph
But
papers?
it's primarily, but they did do some very basic technological things that, the computers, not all the computers were working right and all that. And, they're like eyeballing entry,
Right.
We could talk a lot about Apollo 13.
And-
I won't get started.
I see this paper here. So what does it represent?
Yeah, so I pulled
what is-
this out because we were talking about technology, and I thought you might be interested in it. So
Definitely.
I gave a speech at the University of Michigan a number of years ago, and I put up a photograph that I had that showed four of us in the back room of Mission Control
Okay.
at a table, and I asked the students, today's students, what do you think we were doing? And several guessed. And of course, they couldn't possibly guess. And I said, okay, so I had a slide. This is actually one of the original sheets from the night of Apollo 11. And the data would come down on a CRT, cathode ray tube, basically a TV screen in digital format. But if you're an engineer, you want to monitor trends. You don't want to just look at data. So we had about 10 channels of telemetry that would send things down, temperatures and oxygen pressures and things like that. So this one happens to be, it says sublimator gas outlet temperature. That was our heat exchanger. So
Okay.
we're getting data that's telling us what's the temperature coming out. And then the other one, PGA, stood for pressure garment assembly, which is basically a spacesuit. And so what is the spacesuit pressure? And then we would use, now they're called highlighters, but back then they were
Right.
called magic markers.
Okay.
And so we would put a line on where we saw the data on the ground.
Okay.
So if you're in this band, as you can see here, if you're in this band, you're okay. Ironically, this was on depressurizing the spacecraft and stuff.
Okay.
But you can see this line is below the yellow.
Yep.
But it's below the yellow because it's performing even better
Better
than
than
it did on the
expected.
ground. And the reason was in the ground you can't get a perfect vacuum in a vacuum chamber, but in space you get a
You will
perfect
get it for
vacuum,
sure.
and it performed that much better because of the perfect vacuum. But this is the actual sheet. We each had several of these, but this is the actual sheet I plotted on July 20th, 1969. It's one of my favorite things, actually.
That's phenomenal. That's an artifact. Yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah. Somebody said that belongs in the Smithsonian. No, you're not getting it from me.
Find someone else.
Yeah.
That's amazing. And we're making this project about Texas, and Texas is a very unique state in the United States. When people travel outside, when Texans are traveling outside of the state, they don't call themselves as Americans, they call themselves as Texans, right? And they expect the entire world will know the difference, right? That Texas is Texas, right? Is there a Texan dream? Who lives the Texan dream?
Well, I would say it's not so much a dream. In my wildest dreams, I never expected to ever live in Texas. Not even close. I found over the years was the first 2 years. So we had a lot of people transfer down from our headquarters in Connecticut. If they made it 2 years, because it takes some adaptation, you couldn't get them to go back. They wouldn't go back. I was asked to go back, and I said, I'm not going back. And that was very common. So while it wasn't a dream, once I got here, I remember my boss asked me, I was here like maybe 3 months or something, and he said, well, what do you think? And I said, well, the weather's a little different than I'm used to, but I love the job. And what happens is the job plus the culture plus the friends, it overcomes the heat and the humidity, which we just put up with in the summers, and we enjoy our winters a lot.
That's true.
So I came from Connecticut, where I would have executives come down to meet with me, and they'd come down in July and August and say, how do you stand this? I said, we do the same thing in the summer that you do in the winter. We stay inside, but that's not their mentality, So I tried to get one guy to go back. I mean, they really wanted him to go back. He was a great systems engineer. And he said, Tom, the last thing I did before coming down here was I took my snow shovel and I put it in the trash. And I promised myself I was never buying another snow shovel. And no, I will not go back. And he didn't go back.
Right.
And I kind of did the same thing without the snow shovel. So yeah, Texas is, you hit on something that very few people hit on. I tell people this, the best way to understand Texas is to not think of it as a different state, but to think of it as its own country. And that will help you understand. The pride in Texas is, I never thought I'd be bragging about Texas, but I do it a lot now. There's a ranch in Texas called the King Ranch.
Yes.
It is larger than the state of Rhode Island, which was adjacent to the state I grew up. I have a favorite saying, for those who understand, no explanation is needed. For those who don't, none is sufficient. And that's what it's like living in Texas. You can't really explain it. Yeah.
I totally agree.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having us.
Well, it's been my pleasure.